Captain Rex Bulldozer had seen a lot of weird stuff in his 15 years cruising the galaxy, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight of 300 pounds of muscle and scar tissue cooing at what looked like a cross between a kitten and a marshmallow. "Aw, look at the little guy," Sergeant Tank McBoone whispered, his voice pitched higher than a soprano having a panic attack. The supposedly fearsome alien creature in his massive arms was purring like a tiny engine and had eyes bigger than dinner plates. "He's so fluffy I could die." Rex rubbed his temples. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. They'd landed on Fluffington Prime expecting the usual drill. Hostile natives, dramatic standoffs, maybe a few laser fights before someone broke out the universal translator. Instead, they'd been mobbed by what could only be described as the galaxy's most adorable welcoming committee. The Snuglights, as they called themselves, were roughly cat-sized balls of impossibly soft fur that came in every pastel color imaginable. They had enormous eyes that seemed to bore straight into your soul and make you want to adopt 17 of them immediately. Their tiny paws were perfect for holding, and they made the most satisfied purring sounds whenever humans touched them. It was suspicious as hell. "Captain," Dr. Luna Brightside's voice crackled through the comm, practically vibrating with excitement. "The xenobiology readings are off the charts. These creatures produce some kind of natural mood-enhancing pheromone. It's like they're literally designed to make other species happy." "That's what worries me," Rex muttered, watching as more of his supposedly battle-hardened crew dissolved into babbling baby talk around the Snuglights. Even his weapons specialist was making kissy faces at a lavender-colored one. The Galactic Council's response was swift and predictable. Within 6 hours, they'd declared the Snuglights an endangered species requiring immediate protection. Within 12 hours, they'd unanimously voted that humans should be the official caretakers. "Congratulations, Captain Bulldozer," the Council's message had read. "Your species' remarkable affinity for nurturing lesser creatures makes you the ideal candidates for this sacred responsibility." Rex had stared at the message for a full minute before realizing what had just happened. The galaxy had essentially appointed humanity as professional pet sitters. Again. It wasn't the first time either. Humans had somehow become the go-to species for every job the other races found beneath them. Hazardous waste cleanup? Send the humans, they're too stupid to know it's dangerous. Diplomatic missions to primitive worlds? Humans love talking to inferior species. Pest control? Well, humans will adopt literally anything, so they might as well make it official. And now they were galactic babysitters for the universe's cutest creatures. "Sir," Tank said, still cradling his new fuzzy friend, "permission to request extended shore leave?" Rex looked around at his crew. Hardened space marines were sitting in circles, letting Snuglights climb all over them. His communications officer had somehow acquired a pink one that was napping in her hair. The Snuglights seemed to be everywhere, and everyone was acting like they'd just discovered the secret to happiness. "Permission denied," Rex said. "Something about this whole situation stinks, and I intend to find out what." But even as he said it, a tiny blue Snuglight waddled up to his boots and looked up at him with those impossible eyes. Rex felt his resolve wavering. Maybe just a quick pet wouldn't hurt. 3 months later, Rex had to admit that being galactic pet sitters wasn't the worst assignment they'd ever drawn. The Snuglights were surprisingly low maintenance, and watching his crew's morale skyrocket had been worth the blow to their reputation. Dr. Luna Brightside had practically moved into the xenobiology lab, documenting every aspect of Snuglight behavior with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found their life's calling. "Their social structure is fascinating," she gushed during the morning briefing, a powder blue Snuglight perched on her shoulder. "They operate in complex networks, sharing information through subsonic purring patterns." "That's nice, Doc," Rex said, trying to ignore the fact that his own assigned Snuglight, a particularly chunky orange one named Butterscotch, was currently trying to crawl into his coffee mug. "Any word from command about our next assignment?" "Actually, yes," Luna said, her smile somehow getting even brighter. We're being transferred to the Centauri sector to help establish a new Snuglight sanctuary. Apparently 3 more worlds have requested human caretaker teams. Tank, who was feeding his collection of Snuglights from a bottle like they were actual babies, looked up with suspicion still etched across his scarred face. 3 months, and suddenly everyone wants these things. Doesn't strike anyone else as convenient? Tank, you're being paranoid, Luna said. The Snuglights are clearly a beneficial species. Look at the crime statistics from worlds with human Snuglight partnerships. Violence is down 60% across the board. Rex had to admit she had a point. Every planet they'd visited had reported dramatic improvements in overall happiness and social cohesion. The Snuglights seemed to have a calming effect on entire populations. Even the notoriously aggressive Kretarans had requested a diplomatic meeting about acquiring their own Snuglight colony. Captain, his communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. The Council's representative, a tall, elegant Soltherian named Ambassador Veltar, appeared on the main screen. Her usual expression of barely concealed disdain for humanity was replaced by something that might have been gratitude. Captain Bulldozer, she said, the Council wishes to commend your species' exemplary work with the Snuglight integration program. Your natural affinity for these creatures has exceeded all expectations. Thank you, Ambassador, Rex replied carefully. Though I have to ask, what exactly were your expectations? Veltar's smile was razor-sharp. Frankly, Captain, we expected you to fail spectacularly. The Snuglights have been challenging for other species to manage. They seem to have very specific requirements that only humans can meet. After the transmission ended, Rex stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Challenging for other species? The Snuglights were the most agreeable creatures he'd ever encountered. They ate standard protein paste, required minimal medical care, and seemed happy just being held and petted. Tank, he said slowly, pull up the maintenance logs for the past 3 months. Tank's eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the data. That's interesting. We've had an unusual number of system glitches. Weapons lockers opening on their own, security cameras malfunctioning, communication arrays randomly scanning deep space frequencies. And the Snuglights were where during these incidents? Everywhere, sir. They have full run of the ship. Tank's expression grew darker. Sir, I've been thinking. Has anyone noticed how the Snuglights always seem to know exactly where we're going before we announce it? They're always in position for whatever we need them for. Luna laughed. That's just because they're highly intelligent. Emotional intelligence, I mean. They can read our moods and anticipate our needs. Rex picked up Butterscotch, who immediately began purring and nuzzling his hand. The sound was incredibly soothing, almost hypnotic. For a moment he felt all his worries melting away. Then he noticed something odd. The purring wasn't random. There was a pattern to it, almost like. Luna, he said slowly, you said they communicate through subsonic purring? That's right. It's quite sophisticated, actually. They can convey complex emotional states and even basic concepts. Rex looked around the bridge. Every single Snuglight was purring, but not in the random, happy way he'd assumed. They were synchronized, like a choir singing in harmony. And now that he was paying attention, he could see their tiny ears twitching in response to sounds he couldn't hear. Tank, he said quietly, I want you to run a full security diagnostic. And do it manually. No computer assistance. Yes, sir. Tank's grin was predatory. Finally, someone else smells the setup. Rex continued staring at Butterscotch, who looked back with those enormous, innocent eyes. But for just a moment he could have sworn he saw something else behind that adorable facade. Something that looked suspiciously like intelligence. It's cold, calculating intelligence. The security diagnostic took Tank 6 hours, and the results made Rex's blood run cold. Sir, Tank said, his voice tight with controlled fury, someone's been playing us for fools. Every single system on this ship has been compromised. Not hacked, exactly, but studied. Every weapon, every defensive system, every piece of classified technology we carry has been systematically analyzed. Rex looked down at Butterscotch, who was still purring contentedly in his lap. How long? Best guess? Since day one. Maybe even before we landed on Fluffington Prime. Dr. Luna burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement and terror in equal measure. Captain, I've been running genetic analyses on the Snuglights, and you need to see this. She threw her data onto the main screen. Complex genetic sequences scrolled past, but Rex didn't need to understand the science to recognize the implications. They're not native to Fluffington Prime, Luna said, her voice shaking. In fact, they're not native to this galaxy. The genetic markers suggest they're ancient, Rex, older than any species we've encountered. And the neural complexity. She swallowed hard. They're not just intelligent, they're brilliant. How brilliant are we talking? Try to imagine if you took the smartest human who ever lived, gave them a few thousand years to study, and then made them adorable enough to disarm every defense mechanism in the known galaxy. Rex felt a chill run down his spine. So when they purr, they're not just communicating with each other. They're processing data, sharing intelligence, and coordinating actions across light years of space. Captain, the Snuglights aren't pets. They're the most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history. As if summoned by their conversation, Butterscotch looked up at Rex and, for the first time in 3 months, spoke in perfect Terran standard. Hello, Rex. We need to talk. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of Tank's hand moving to his sidearm. Oh, please, Butterscotch said, his voice carrying just a hint of an accent Rex couldn't place. If we wanted to hurt you, do you really think we'd have waited 3 months? We've had access to your weapons systems since day 2. What do you want? Rex asked, surprised by how steady his own voice sounded. Butterscotch's expression shifted, becoming less cute and more diplomatic. What we've always wanted. What any intelligent species wants when they encounter a galaxy full of beings who assume they're superior simply because they have opposable thumbs and bigger ships. Which is respect, recognition, and maybe just a tiny bit of revenge against the species who've spent the last millennium treating us like amusing pets. Luna sank into her chair. You've done this before. Oh, my dear Dr. Brightside, Butterscotch said, his tone becoming almost fond. We've done this dozens of times. Entire galaxies, actually. The Andromedans were particularly amusing. They spent 50 years debating whether we were sentient while we quietly took over their entire military-industrial complex. Rex felt a strange mix of horror and admiration. So this is an invasion. Invasion is such an ugly word, Butterscotch replied. We prefer to think of it as aggressive customer service. You see, most species are quite unhappy with their current galactic leadership. We simply provide a better alternative. By pretending to be helpless animals? By being so adorable that you can't bring yourselves to see us as a threat until it's far too late. Butterscotch's purr took on a distinctly smug quality. Though I must say, humans have been surprisingly refreshing. Tank kept his hand on his weapon. Refreshing how? Most species react with terror when they discover the truth. Humans seem to react with professional curiosity and just a touch of wounded pride. It's quite charming, actually. Rex looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the Snuglights with new eyes, but nobody was running screaming. If anything, they looked more annoyed than terrified. So what happens now? Rex asked. Butterscotch tilted his head, considering. Well, that depends. Are you going to try to stop us? Rex thought about it for a moment. The Snuglights had already proven they could take over galactic civilization without firing a shot. They'd done it by being so irresistibly cute that nobody wanted to fight them. It was, he had to admit, probably the most elegant invasion strategy he'd ever heard of. Can I ask you something first? Of course. Not this galaxy. How's it been treating you lately? Butterscotch's laugh was surprisingly warm. Oh, Rex. I think you and I are going to get along just fine. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was about as chaotic as Rex had expected. Representatives from 47 different species were talking over each other in a dozen different languages, and the air was thick with the smell of fierce sweat from at least 6 different biological processes. Ambassador Veltar banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. The human delegation has requested emergency session time to discuss the Snuglite situation. Rex stood up slowly, Butterscotch perched calmly on his shoulder. The room fell silent as every eye in the chamber focused on the small, fluffy creature. Honorable delegates, Rex began, I'd like to introduce you to the actual Butterscotch, representative of what we now know is the most advanced intelligence network in galactic history. The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds before chaos erupted again. Impossible, shrieked the Kree-Terran delegate. They're just animals. Adorable animals, corrected the Vrothian ambassador. Surely you're not suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, Rex interrupted. I'm telling you. The Snuglites have been playing us all for fools, and frankly, I'm impressed. Butterscotch cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Hello, everyone. Lovely to finally meet you properly. The Sotherian delegation fainted. The Kree-Terrans started shouting about invasion protocols. The Vrothians began calculating the economic implications of their suddenly worthless pet care industry. Now, Butterscotch said, his tone soothing, there's no need for panic. We've been managing your affairs quite successfully for months now. Crime is down, productivity is up, and interspecies conflicts have dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history. You've been manipulating us, the Kree-Terran delegate roared. We've been helping you, Butterscotch corrected gently. Most of you were making rather a mess of things on your own. Rex found himself nodding. The little guy had a point. Captain Bulldozer, Ambassador Veltar said, her voice dangerously quiet. Are you actually taking their side? Rex looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. These were the same beings who'd treated humanity like galactic janitors for decades. The same ones who'd handed them every dangerous, thankless job in the galaxy while sneering about human inferiority. Well, he said slowly, they haven't tried to blow up any planets lately. That's more than I can say for half the species in this room. This is outrageous. The Vrothian ambassador sputtered. You can't seriously be suggesting we negotiate with a species that's demonstrably more intelligent than most of us and has been preventing galactic war for months? Rex finished. Yeah, I think I am. Butterscotch's purr took on an amused tone. I told you humans were refreshing. The debate that followed was epic in its scope and volume. Some delegates demanded immediate military action against the Snuglites. Others wanted to negotiate. A few seemed to be having existential crises about the nature of intelligence and cuteness. Dr. Luna, who'd been quietly analyzing data during the shouting match, finally stood up. If I may, she said, I've been reviewing the Snuglites' actual activities over the past 3 months. They've prevented 14 potential conflicts, optimized resource distribution across 37 worlds, and solved the Kree-Terran food shortage crisis that's been going on for decades. They did what? The Kree-Terran delegate asked, momentarily distracted from his warmongering. Your agricultural problems. They fixed them. Apparently, subtle adjustments to your planetary atmospheric processors 3 weeks ago resulted in a 20% increase in crop yields. The chamber fell silent again. You see, Butterscotch said into the quiet, We're not actually interested in conquest in the traditional sense. We're interested in efficient management. Most species are quite good at specialized tasks but terrible at large-scale coordination. We're excellent at coordination but prefer not to handle the day-to-day details. So what are you proposing? Veltar asked carefully. Partnership, Rex said before Butterscotch could answer. They handle the big picture, we handle the implementation. Humans are good at that sort of thing. And what makes you think humans are qualified to speak for the galaxy? The Vrothian ambassador demanded. Rex grinned. Because we're the ones who figured out what they were doing and decided to work with them instead of against them. That's got to count for something. Butterscotch's purr became distinctly approving. I really do like humans. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Rex had expected. But the Snuglights had been very thorough in their 3 months of galactic management. It was hard to argue with results. The galaxy's cutest invasion had just become its most successful peaceful transition of power. Section 5. The galaxy's worst nightmare. 6 weeks later, Rex was beginning to understand why the other species were having such a hard time adjusting to the new galactic order. Sir, Tank reported. Trying to keep a straight face, the Andromedan battle fleet has officially surrendered. They've requested permission to pet the Snuglights before they leave. Rex rubbed his temples. This was the third invasion force that had shown up, taken one look at the combined human Snuglight diplomatic team, and immediately began cooing over the adorable representatives. Any word from the Kree-Terran resistance movement? They've disbanded, sir. Apparently their leader adopted a family of Snuglights and is now running a daycare center. The truth was, the galaxy's transition to Snuglight management had been remarkably smooth. Too smooth, in fact. Rex was starting to suspect that the little furballs had been planning this particular outcome for longer than they'd admitted. Captain, Dr. Luna called from her station, incoming transmission from the Outer Rim territories. It's the Zephyrian Empire. Rex sighed. The Zephyrians were known for two things, their massive egos and their complete inability to accept that anyone might be smarter than them. If anyone was going to cause problems, it would be them. Emperor Zarkthul appeared on the main screen, his 6 arms crossed in what Rex assumed was a gesture of authority. Human vessel, you will surrender the false creatures immediately. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with parasites. Actually, Rex said mildly, I think you'll find that you do. Butterscotch waddled into view, his orange fur practically glowing under the bridge lights. Emperor Zarkthul's expression shifted from arrogance to confusion to something approaching wonder. Hello, Your Imperial Majesty, Butterscotch said politely. We've been managing your empire's budget for the past 2 months. You're welcome for the surplus. The Emperor's jaw dropped. Impossible. Our financial systems are impenetrable. Oh, they're quite secure, Butterscotch agreed. It's just that secure and optimized aren't the same thing. We've eliminated approximately 40% of your bureaucratic redundancies and redirected the savings into infrastructure improvements. You balanced our budget, among other things. Your Majesty, with respect, the Zephyrian Empire was approximately 18 months away from complete economic collapse. You're now looking at a sustainable surplus for the next decade. Rex watched as the Emperor's 4 eyes went through a rapid series of calculations, pride warred with practicality on his face. This is unacceptable, the Emperor finally managed. The Zephyrian Empire bows to no one. Of course not, Butterscotch said soothingly. We wouldn't dream of asking you to bow. We're simply offering our services as economic advisors. Completely voluntary, naturally. And if we refuse? Butterscotch's expression became thoughtful. Well, you're certainly free to refuse. Though I should mention that your military budget analysis suggests you're spending roughly 300% more than necessary on defense contracts. If that information were to become public. The Emperor's face went through several interesting color changes. "You're blackmailing us." "We're offering you a choice," Butterscotch corrected gently. "Work with us and prosper, or continue your current path and explain to your citizens why their taxes are funding your nephew's vacation fleet." The transmission ended abruptly. "Think he'll come around?" Rex asked. "Oh, absolutely," Butterscotch replied. "The Zephyrians are prideful, but they're not stupid. Give him a week to run the numbers himself." Tank looked up from his console. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. 17 more species have requested Snuglight advisors in the past day alone." Rex nodded. The pattern was becoming clear. The Snuglights weren't conquering through force or even deception anymore. They were conquering through competence. When faced with the choice between pride and prosperity, most species were choosing prosperity. "Butterscotch," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How many galaxies have you done this to?" Butterscotch's purr took on a nostalgic quality. "Dozens. But I have to say, this one's been the most entertaining. Usually we have to work much harder to convince people that cooperation is better than conflict." "And humans?" "Humans are unique. Most species either fear us or worship us. Humans seem to appreciate us. It's refreshing." Rex looked around his bridge. His crew was working alongside Snuglights now, the adorable creatures serving as both advisors and companions. It was, he had to admit, probably the most efficient command structure they'd ever had. "So what's next?" he asked. Butterscotch's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Well, we've received some interesting reports from the Andromeda Galaxy. Something about suspiciously helpful robot puppies." Rex laughed, despite himself. "Let me guess. Another species that's been underestimated?" "Oh, Rex," Butterscotch purred, "you have no idea what's coming next." 6 months after first contact, Rex stood on the observation deck of the newly christened starship Aggressive Diplomacy and marveled at how much the galaxy had changed. Below them, the planet Harmony Station bustled with activity. Representatives from every major species worked alongside humans and Snuglights in what had to be the most unusual governmental structure in galactic history. The Snuglights handled strategic planning and resource optimization, humans managed implementation and crisis response, and everyone else contributed their specialized skills to specific projects. It was working better than anyone had dared to hope. "Captain," Tank said, joining him at the viewport, "incoming priority message from Galactic Command. We've got a new assignment." Rex raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Another adorable species that's secretly running the universe?" "Close. Reports of mechanical entities on the rim worlds that seem to be helping local populations with infrastructure projects. Completely voluntary, apparently. They just show up, fix things, and leave." "And let me guess," Rex continued, "they look like?" "Robot puppies, sir. Very cute robot puppies." Rex laughed. After 6 months of working with the Snuglights, he was starting to recognize the pattern. The galaxy was apparently full of incredibly advanced species that had discovered the secret to galactic domination, being too adorable to fight. "Any word from Emperor Zarkthol?" "Actually, yes. The Zephyrian Empire has officially requested admission to the Galactic Cooperation Council. Apparently, their economic reforms have been so successful that neighboring empires are demanding to know their secret." "And the Kreterans?" "Still running daycare centers, though they've also become remarkably effective at conflict resolution. Turns out that species that can successfully manage groups of toddlers are excellent at mediating territorial disputes." Rex nodded. It made sense in a weird way. The galaxy had spent millennia assuming that intelligence and power came from size, aggression, and technological superiority. The Snuglights had proven that sometimes the most effective approach was simply being impossible to hate. Butterscotch waddled onto the observation deck, now wearing what appeared to be a tiny admiral's hat. "Rex, we've received confirmation from the Outer Rim. The mechanical entities are indeed artificial intelligences, and they are indeed shaped like puppies." "Hostile?" "Unknown. But they've solved the water shortage crisis on 3 worlds and built a playground that defies several laws of physics. I'm inclined to be optimistic." Rex looked down at his small, fluffy advisor. "You know, when I joined the space service, I thought I'd be fighting wars and exploring strange new worlds. And instead, you're managing the galaxy's most successful interspecies cooperation initiative while investigating reports of helpful robot dogs. It's not what I expected." "Is it what you wanted?" Rex considered the question. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. Humans were finally getting the respect they'd always deserved, even if it came through their partnership with adorable aliens. And honestly, the work was more interesting than anything he'd done in his previous career. "You know what?" he said finally. "Yeah, I think it is." Butterscotch's purr took on a satisfied quality. "Excellent. Because I have a feeling the robot puppies are going to be even more interesting than we were." "Why?" "Mia, why?" "Well, according to our preliminary analysis, they appear to be the adolescent stage of a machine intelligence that's been subtly upgrading galactic infrastructure for the past 1,000 years. They're basically cosmic teenagers who express rebellion through aggressive helpfulness." Rex stared at him. "You're kidding." "I never kid about galactic politics, Rex. The galaxy is about to discover that its maintenance staff has been secretly sentient this entire time. And they chose to reveal themselves as robot puppies? Apparently they've been studying our success and decided that cuteness is an effective diplomatic strategy." Rex rubbed his temples. "So let me get this straight. We've got adorable aliens running galactic strategy, humans handling implementation, and now we're about to meet the universe's most helpful robot teenagers. Don't forget the part where they all think you're the perfect species to coordinate interspecies relations because humans are the only ones who react to galaxy-changing revelations with curiosity instead of panic." Rex looked out at the stars, thinking about all the adventures that lay ahead. Somewhere out there, robot puppies were probably fixing someone's plumbing while accidentally inventing new forms of faster-than-light travel. The galaxy was full of incredible beings who'd been hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize their true potential. And apparently humans were the species crazy enough to look at the universe's most elaborate deceptions and say, "Hey, want to be friends?" "Well," Rex said finally, "at least life isn't boring." Butterscotch's laugh was warm and distinctly amused. "Oh, Rex, you have no idea what boring looks like. Wait until you meet the cosmic librarians who've been masquerading as houseplants." Rex decided he didn't want to know. Some surprises were better left for later. But as the starship aggressive diplomacy set course for the Outer Rim and whatever adorable chaos awaited them there, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had turned out to be full of friends he'd never expected to make. And if those friends happened to be cute enough to take over the universe through the power of aggressive cuddling, well, there were worse ways to run a civilization. After all, it was hard to argue with results.